Let it be. For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to this breaking news NFL bombshell. Andrew Luck reportedly to retire from the National Football League just 2 weeks before the start of the 2019 NFL season. Tonight was supposed to be a night where college football took center stage. That's a really good football game that's going on right now. And unfortunately, we had to divert from Florida and Miami and come and talk about this NFL bombshell. I almost didn't believe it when I saw it on Twitter. Adam Schefter was the first one to have it, at least when I saw it. It was Adam Schefter on Twitter releasing the news that per sources, Andrew Luck is already filed with the league to retire, and he is notifying Colts owner Jim Irsay of that, and they're going to have a press conference tomorrow to finalize his retirement. It is stunning. It is absolutely shocking. Now, because of the injury history with Andrew Luck and all of the struggles he's had just to get on the field and stay on the field, you can understand the mental wear and the exhaustion and the draining episodes he's had to try to get on the field. This latest one with the ankle, it started as a calf. A lot of people believe it may be an Achilles. Bottom line is, it just becomes tough. It wears on you. And not just mentally, as we heard as one of the big reasons as to why he was retiring. He's just mentally tired and exhausted from trying everything he can to get on the field and stay on the field to help his team. But also you have to think about the physical ramifications of what he's went through in his relatively young NFL career. I mean, look at the guys that are at the quarterback position right now that we can't get out of the door fast enough, and Brady and Breeze and Rivers and Manning and all these guys that are hanging around that won't go away. And here is a young budding star here in Andrew Luck, and he can't stay on the field, and he's hanging it up at 28. I've been reading comments. I've been listening to people talk on some of these social media sites, and I've looked at some of your comments. And someone said in the comment section, most shocking retirement since Barry. I think so. I mean, Calvin Johnson's retirement was shocking. I don't think most of us saw that one coming. He didn't kind of allude to him hanging it up. I think Barry's caught us off guard more than Calvin Johnson's, though. And so this one is probably akin to that. You had heard some rumblings and grumblings about Calvin Johnson potentially, wanting to hang it up. But I don't think we thought he was going to. But Barry Sanders caught everybody off guard. And this is catching everyone off guard. Again, 2 weeks before the season starts, everyone's assuming he's doing his best to try to get back on the field. And I had just seen a report earlier today that Andrew Luck had seen some doctors and that he was very optimistic, and the team was that he would be back on the field for week 1. So to hear this report now that, he's had enough mentally and physically and that he just can't do it anymore, it's shocking to say the least. I know I've said that word at least 4 or 5 times already, but I think that's the best way to describe this NFL bombshell is it's a shock. And remember, it's just 7 drafts ago that we're talking about this guy as a can't-miss prospect, along with Robert Griffin III, as one of the best quarterback draft classes we've seen in quite some time. That turned out to be a farce, obviously, with all the guys that went in the first round in that draft. Robert Griffin III, now Andrew Luck retiring. Brandon Weeden was in the first round of that draft. The best quarterback in that draft class most likely is going to wind up being Russell Wilson, but that's nor here nor there. This is a shocking revelation. And it changes everything, not just in the AFC South landscape, where it's been a rough night for the AFC South. You've got Andrew Luck retiring for them Colts. The Texans fear that Lamar Miller has torn his ACL. And I talked about the Texans and how I think they're going to have a rough season this year. And I talked about my concern with the running back position, and that was with Lamar Jackson. Now you take him out of the equation, it's Duke Johnson and a bunch of no-names. They're going to have to do something at running back. They may have to trade for someone. They may have to wait till some running backs get cut and add a guy to the roster. But the AFC South has had a rough go of it today. And now you add this on top. But look at it in the bigger picture of the AFC. This was a team that a lot of people, including me, thought that if Andrew Luck is healthy, they're one of the teams that could compete in the AFC conference with New England and with Kansas City and Pittsburgh and Baltimore and some of the other teams we think are really good in the AFC conference. We thought they were right there with a healthy Andrew Luck, and now he's out of the equation. We also talked about on the AFC breakdown, that AFC South breakdown, that the Colts were lucky to have Jacoby Brissett. I thought that their backup quarterback situation was the best in football, and they had a guy that could step in right away and give them quality production and not feel like your season was totally over if Andrew Luck couldn't play. We did not foresee this coming, but here we are, less than 2 weeks away from the start of the NFL season, and now Andrew Luck has decided to hang it up. And Jacoby Brissett has been getting ready all along, preparing as the starter. So if you're the Colts, you do take solace in knowing that you have a guy that can give you a shot. But Jacoby Brissett by no means is Andrew Luck. So again, if you're a Colts fan, it's bittersweet. On one end, you look at Andrew Luck and you say, man, you know what? Good for you, Andrew, because it was tough for you to get on the field. It sucks that you're no longer going to be our quarterback and our guy, but we understand. On the other end, you're like, shit, that really put a damper on what was a very promising season and maybe a promising future. Again, health assumed with Andrew Luck, you like to think that he was going to go down as one of the best NFL quarterbacks we've seen in this generation, but he had to stay healthy, and that's something he had struggled with throughout his career. It's a shame because I loved watching him play. He played the game with an aggressive nature that ultimately probably did him in, but nonetheless, the Colts took too long to get him the type of protection that was necessary earlier in his career when he was running around and being Superman for them, and it ultimately caught up with him, all the injuries. Some guys just have the worst luck, and Andrew Luck was one of those guys. It's crazy. I just said some guys have the worst luck, and Andrew Luck, it's somewhat apropos that his last name, it's ironic, his last name didn't really benefit him in the league. He just wasn't lucky. When it all was, said and done, Andrew Luck was unlucky in this league, and it's unfortunate. We'll always have the Andrew Luck Twitter account, IG account, but Sir Andrew, man, we will miss Andrew Luck. That is for certain. And now, who knows what's to become of the AFC South? If you're a team like the Tennessee Titans, who could never beat Andrew Luck, and the Indianapolis Colts with Andrew Luck in the lineup, you're probably grinning from ear to ear here. You don't want to see anybody get hurt. You don't want to see anybody retire. But I think the biggest winners of today are Jacksonville and Tennessee, wouldn't you say? With the retirement of Andrew Luck and now the injury to Lamar Miller, those two teams stand to gain from what has transpired in the last 3 hours or so. So it's unfortunate that we're having this conversation, and a guy that had so much talent and so much promise is going to have his career cut short due to injuries and just the mental drain of trying to always rehab and get yourself back on the field. And we a lot of times I talk about this with players. I always side with the players because you just don't know how much these guys go through to get on the football field. And it turns out that Andrew Luck had just simply had enough of trying to get his body right and working to try to get back on the field. It's tiring, it's mentally draining, and it caught up with Andrew Luck as he decides to retire from the National Football League. Reportedly, is going to retire at just the age of 28, which is mind-boggling. You just don't see it. A lot of these guys, we got to pull them away from the NFL. When it's time to go and Father Time taps them on the shoulder, they're waving them off like, hey, man, get off of me. I'm not ready to go yet. And with Andrew Luck, simply just couldn't keep him on the field with injuries. And, man, this is crazy. I've said enough, though. Want to get to your comments and talk about what you guys feel about this Andrew Luck bombshell, him potentially retiring from the NFL at just the age of 28. So we start with Vincent Cole, who says the Colts should keep the tradition and wait for the chance to land the next great quarterback prospect in Trevor Lawrence. Well, he's still 2 years away, so you can't wait on Trevor Lawrence. He's not going to be in the next year's draft. That's going to be the Tua and the Herbert and all of those guys, Jacob Fromm. Those guys are going to be the quarterbacks that everybody. I'm keep telling everybody, Jordan Love at Utah State. I'm not going to continue to keep harping on that, but that's the guy that's going to come out of nowhere and I think ascend to potentially the top draft pick in the draft. But that's nor here nor there. Jacoby Brissett, if he's healthy, he's not going to allow this team to be 2-14 like they were the year when Andrew Luck didn't play and they had, all of those bums in there. I think they had Curtis Painter and a bunch of clowns at quarterback. It's not going to be that bad for them this year. They still may win 7-8 games this year with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. And if he thrives, they may be able to just pass him the baton because I think he's a capable starter. Again, he's no Andrew Luck, but I think Jacoby Brissett is a capable starter in this league. We're going to find out just how much he's learned over these last couple of years in Indy. He got to play a ton 2 years ago. He had to sit last year. He may have learned from Andrew Luck and got to get a good feel for Frank Wright in this offense. And now maybe he's ready to do damage in Indy. We'll see. But it's really, really tough to say right now. Colts fan says, Lou, I can't honestly say how much we took Andrew for granted. I think you're right. Some people did. I didn't. I was a massive Andrew Luck fan. And I thought that this guy had a chance to be really good. And I think what people took for granted because he was such a tough guy was just how much he put his body on the line. How much he actually did for the Colts. I think some people just assumed, oh, that's Andrew Luck. He'll take care of business. And they didn't realize the punishment that this guy was taking week in and week out to get his team to 12-4, to get his team to 11-5 and win the AFC South, or to get him into the playoffs like he did last year. They didn't realize how much of a toll it took on his body. And I think some people did take Andrew Luck for granted. Colts fan also says, Andrew Luck is hands down my favorite NFL player of all time and one of my favorite athletes of all time. It was a pleasure to watch this man play for 6 seasons. I agree with the pleasure of watching him perform for the last 6 seasons. He was a joy to watch, and the pundits were right about him. Everyone, the talking heads that said that this guy was a can't-miss prospect. When he was healthy, he was legit NFL royalty, and it's a shame that his body somewhat failed him throughout his career. A Colts fan says the man had torn cartilage in 2 ribs, a partially torn abdomen, a lacerated kidney, and a torn labrum. Good for him to call it quits. And that's kind of what I mentioned at the top, that this guy's been through so much that people don't really understand. If you're not a Colts fan, if you're not following the NFL very closely, you have no idea what Andrew Luck was going through all the time to try to play and help his team win. It's a lot, and this is why a lot of people talk about the money that these players get. Yes, they know what they're signing up for. It still doesn't diminish the fact that they put a taxing on their bodies, and they should be compensated for that. That's why when you hear guys like Yannick Ngakoue turning down, a $20 million or a $19 or $18 million per year deal, I said, yeah, turn that shit down because you're probably worth 21 or 22 million per year and $70-80 million guaranteed. When you hear Zeke Elliott wanting what he wants, yes, it's a physically demanding sport, and especially for running backs where you're probably not going to get a second massive deal. You better cash in on that first one. So these guys put a lot on their bodies, and Andrew Luck definitely did that for the Colts. Colts fan also says, I'm not angry at all. I'm just happy for him. Storm says, so surreal. Most surprising retirement since Barry. And I talked about that earlier. I think Calvin Johnson's retirement was pretty surprising. But if you're talking about pure shock value, I think you do have to go back to Barry Sanders back in, 1998 he retired. I think he retired after the 97 season. So, yeah, I'd like to think that this is the biggest shock. And Barry might have been after the 98 season. I think it was the 97 season. He rushed for 2,000 yards in 97, I believe. And then I think he either retired after that 2,000-yard season or he played one more year and then retired. Either way, this may be the most shocking retirement since Barry. I think for shock value purposes, I think this is the biggest shock that we've seen in terms of a retirement with Andrew Luck. Storm asks, are the Colts 6-10 right now? 9-7 at best. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Also, JP Lavecchio says, I found out through your channel, so thanks for being on top of things. Again, a lot of people are kind of spread out all over the place. There's so much going on. There's some competitive baseball on right now. My Braves are in a dogfight with the Mets, trying to get a dub on the road. You got the college football again. Miami and Florida. Miami just took the lead over Florida, who's ranked nationally in the top 20. I believe they're like 18th or 14th in the nation. And right now, they're on the ropes. That's a good football game. And we had to divert from that to talk about this. So everyone's kind of spread out right now, not expecting any big news to drop on a Saturday night, and here we are. So I get it, man. Geo Bove is retarded. He says retiring is so easy, even a caveman can do it. It is amazing how this transpired. I'm shocked. I'm somewhat disappointed because, and that's me being selfish because I loved watching Andrew Luck play, but at the same time, as Colts fans said, I am actually happy for him. If this was causing that much mental strain on him, then yeah, some things just aren't worth it. And at this point, with his body breaking down and all the mental strain of trying to get ready and try to get on the field, sometimes it's just better to say, man, I did all I could, but it's time to call it quits. And he's made more than enough money throughout his life. He didn't even need the money, to be honest. His dad was an NFL player. His dad is well off. His family is well off. But he's made enough money throughout his NFL career that, if it was time to go, it's time to go. I don't know if the Colts are going to try to get some of that money back, similar to what the Lions did with Calvin Johnson. I don't know how that situation will go. But at the end of the day, Andrew Luck reportedly retiring from the NFL as soon or as early, potentially, as tomorrow. It will be official with a press conference. Andrew Luck, at 28 years old, retiring from the National Football League. That, I think, puts the Colts, and it definitely changes the projections. I had the Colts going 11-5 and winning the AFC South. Obviously, you have to temper expectations and lower them now. I think you put the Colts somewhere in that 8-8, maybe 7-9. Probably best they can do now is 9-7, unless Jacoby Brissett just simply comes out balls and knocks our socks off. I think you probably put them in that 7-9 to 9-7 range, somewhere in there. I think is where they're going to fall. And now I think that elevates teams like obviously Houston, who had like a major injury tonight that's going to hurt them as well. But you elevate teams like Houston, Tennessee, and Jacksonville in that division now, and other teams in the conference that may have been on the outside looking in saying, well, damn, because of Indianapolis, we may not be able to get into the postseason. If two teams were coming out of the South like they did last year, there may be an open spot for someone to rise and ascend, like a Denver, who I think is going to be better this season. There are other teams that will be able to take advantage of this. Maybe the Raiders. I don't think they're going to be very good, but we're going to see. This is a big bombshell. Andrew Luck retiring from the National Football League as soon as tomorrow, potentially. Didn't see that one coming. What do you guys think about this retirement? What does this mean for the Indianapolis Colts in 2019 and moving forward? Is Jacoby Brissett good enough to get it done? Leave it in the comment section. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And leave it in the comment section. I want to know what you think. What does this retirement do to this franchise in Indianapolis in the present and potentially in the future? Does this make them a bottom feeder, or is Jacoby Brissett ready, willing, and able to take over the mantle and be the guy? Or is he just a temporary stopgap and they're going to have to end up shopping for a quarterback as soon as the 2020 draft, potentially, with all of these quarterbacks that will be coming out? Or maybe, like someone noted in the comment section, maybe they bottom out 2 years from now and the guy that they're after, and they've had some success in doing this, going from Peyton Manning straight to Andrew Luck, essentially. Maybe they are able to stumble upon a guy like Trevor Lawrence. What do you think? Leave it in the comment section below. Andrew Luck retiring from the National Football League. Wow. And remember, a lot of extracurricular activities going on. I've got the Fantasy League. Video is already up. Check that out if you're interested in playing. Also got the Winners and Losers League. Again, check the video. That's up if you're interested in playing. Also got the Soul Survivor Pool. That's up. Check the video if you're interested in participating in that as well. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. I thank you guys for joining me. Wow. NFL bombshell. Andrew Luck reportedly retiring from the National Football League at the age of 28. I'll see you guys soon. Have a good one.
Louie T Network.